Today's shiur begins from the top line of Daf Mem Zayin Omid Aleph. The Gemara relates to a section of the Mishnah toward the end of the Mishnah on Daf Mem Vav Omid Aleph. We saw someone say to his friend, Koinim bayis zeh she'ani nechnas. A person actually imposed upon himself, as opposed to saying to his friend. The Dibur HaMaschil of the Gemara says, Omer l'chaver, but we want to focus on the case of the Mishnah where a person imposed on himself a restriction not to enter a particular house. And when we learned the Mishnah, we emphasized that case 2, as opposed to case 1 that we're referring to right now, case 2 was a neder referring to the house in objective terms, as opposed to case 1 where the neder was a prohibition of entering your house. Here, in case 2, a person imposed on himself a restriction of entering a house, a particular house. This house or this field I will not buy. So that's as far as the case of the Mishnah. Now the Gemara asks concerning a vow with a variation on the theme. And then we read the Gemara. Boy Avimi. Avimi asks, Koinim lebayis zeh she'ato nichnas. And we dash and underline the word she'ato to draw your attention to this unique feature of the vow. A person owns a house, and he says to his friend, I am prohibiting this house. Now, as opposed to saying my house, I'm prohibiting this house from your entrance. Meis oishe mochro li'acher mai. What is the halacha in a case where the original owner dies or original owner sells it to a third party? Can the mudar, the subject of the vow, enter the house or buy that field or buy the house? The question is, Adam Ozer Dover Shibrishuso Shesimrishuso Olo. Can a person prohibit something that right now is in his domain, that he owns, and that the prohibition should continue even when it leaves his domain? For example, he dies and it's inherited by one of his heirs, or he sells it to a third party, or not, or lower, maybe he can't impose what we've termed in the past a long-lasting vow. Omar Rava, Tashma. We have a Tanaic source where it says, a person says to his son, Koinim shiatoneneli. I impose upon you that you shall not benefit from me. Umeis. And then the father dies. Yershenu. The son is entitled to benefit from the property. However, if the father says, B'chayav u'v'moisoi, I don't want you to benefit from this property while I'm alive and even after I die. Umeis, and the father dies. Lo Yershenu, the son cannot inherit. Shma mino, we see from this that a person has the power, Adam Ozer Dover Shibrishuso, L'chshesim Rishuso, that he can impose a vow, a restriction on someone else, as long as when the vow is made, the vower is the owner of it, and that the restriction continues even after the original owner is out of the picture. It left his domain. As you can see here in a case where the man died, the property still remains prohibited to the son. Tanan Hasam. We have a Tanaic source that appears later in the Masechta. Koinim perus so'elu alai. Koinim hein al pi. Koinim hein lepi. Person prohibits benefiting from these fruits. And they have different expressions that reflect the same idea, where he prohibits prohibits his eating of the fruits. The source says, Oser b'chilufehen ubegi du lehem. Not only are the fruits themselves prohibited, but chilufeim. If you, let us say, vowed not to eat of this bowl of oranges, and you took those oranges and you switched them, you exchanged them for someone else's apples. So you cannot eat from the apples, because the apples are simply an exchange for that which you had prohibited. Gidulehem. Let us say you took the food item that you prohibited on yourself and you planted it. You can easily imagine that with some grains that you prohibited, and then you planted the grains and they developed into new plants. You cannot benefit from those either. And now a question is raised. You'll notice that this is a long question, and on the side of the Gemara we have a topic heading. The no say. The she'ela question, Hoimer Koinim Peros Elu Al Ploni Mahu B'chilufehen. As opposed to what this Tanaic source described was a person imposing on himself a restriction, the question will feature a case where a person prohibited benefit from particular fruits on someone else, where he says, I don't want you to benefit from these fruits. What will the law be regarding the chilufehen of those fruits? The Gemara. Boi Rami Bar Chama. Omar, a person said, Koinim Peros Ho'elu Al Ploni. I want to prohibit these fruits on so-and-so. Mahu b'chilufein. Can that so-and-so benefit from the exchange? From, as we said before, apples were exchanged for oranges. Or oranges exchanged for apples. Mi amrinon, do we say, Gabi delay, regarding one's self-imposed, delay means himself, regarding one's self-imposed neder or restriction. Hoyel vi odom oiser peros chavero al atzmo, since a person can prohibit someone else's fruits on himself. When you talk about self-imposed vows, not only does a person have the ability to prohibit his own stuff on himself, he can prohibit someone else's stuff on himself. So since that power exists, Adam oiser davar shelo bali olam al atzmo. Therefore, a person can prohibit things that haven't come to be yet as well. In the case of chilufein, for example, we said before, a person prohibited on himself a bowl of oranges. He owns a bowl of oranges. The apples, he has no connection with them yet. They're davar shelo b'olam. They're something that haven't come to be at all at the time he vowed. However, since a person can prohibit someone else's produce on himself, even though that someone else's produce is not something that you have control over, it belongs to someone else. Well, you can also impose upon yourself a prohibition concerning something that hasn't come to be yet. Gabi chavero, however, with regard to your friend, hayol v'ein odom oiser peros chavero al chavero, ein odom oser davar shelo bo le'olam al chavero. Just like you cannot impose on someone else a prohibition concerning someone else's produce, someone else's material. If A says to Mr. B, I don't want you, Mr. B, to benefit from your fruits. That's ridiculous. You can't do that. So, on the same token, you cannot impose a prohibition regarding something that hasn't come to be on your friend. And if I prohibit my friend from eating this bowl of oranges, that vow is not going to extend to a bowl of apples that I haven't acquired yet at the time of the vow. The Gemara continues at the top of Omid Beis, Oy Dilma, the other side of the analysis is, Mishum de chilufin kegidulim domi lo shnahu velo shna chavero. In order to appreciate the second side of the analysis, we have to accept that if I prohibit on my friend benefit from a bowl of wheat, and then I plant the wheat and it grows into new stalks of grain, my friend cannot benefit from the gidulim either. the gidulim are so much a product, they're quite literally a product, a result of the original prohibited item, that they too are clearly prohibited on the friend. The question here is, do we say that chilufin is like gidulin, just like the gidulin are something that haven't come to be, yet I can prohibit them on my friend? So too the chilufin, the item that I received in exchange for the original prohibited item, is also going to be prohibited. So the question has been raised, can A prohibit on B a vow that would cover not only the original item, but something that eventually is exchanged for the original item? Would that exchanged item also be prohibited to the friend? I hope I'm not misleading anyone in presenting this. I'm not saying that the vow was focused on the exchanged item. The vow was focused on a particular currently owned item. That currently owned item was then exchanged for something else. That something else become prohibited to the friend, just like the original item had been prohibited? On the side of the Gemara, as we see, triangles will shortly appear in the Gemara text. On the side we have a mivneh, structural note. These are attempts to answer the question regarding the chilufin, the exchanged item. Toshma, or I should read, Omar of Acho bar Minyumi Toshma, Omer leishto. Man says to his wife, Koinem shani nenelech, I am prohibiting you from benefiting from me. Lova, the woman, in order to maintain herself, borrows money. After all, she can't get from her husband. The husband said, you cannot benefit from me. So she borrows. Ubale choyvin boyin v'nifroim. The people from whom she borrowed will come to receive their collection from the husband. We look at the Rashi on the second line from the top. Koinim shani nenelech lova ubale choyvin boyin v'nifroim mi bala. The rotzon habal hu, the husband's will is shilavu lo, they should loan to her. V'hahacha demai delofsa me'achirim, in this case, that which she borrows from others, chilufi mamoinu shubal havi. It's in effect the exchange of the money of the husband. V'lo mitzar, and you see that it's allowed. Almodi ein odom oiser dover shelo bali oilom al chavero. The husband, in this case, he cannot prohibit on his wife something that hasn't come to be. As you can see here, after she borrows the money, they then later on come and collect payment from the husband. So once again, the money borrowed is in effect chilufin, and we see that this arrangement is allowed, that the woman who was the subject, the wife, the woman who was the subject of the vow, is allowed to benefit from the chilufin. The Gemara. My taimo ba'alei choyven nifroyin. Why is it that the creditors can come and collect from the husband? Lav mishum de chilufin, lav ke gidulin domi. The chilufin is not like gidulim. And as we said, it is something that does not become prohibited to the subject of the vow. Omar Rava. Dilma lechatchila hu deloi. V'i ovad ovad. This case doesn't reflect what we call a lechatchila situation. This case reflects something that's di ovad, means post facto. We take a look at the Rush together. You'll see in the wide lines of the Rush, a little less than halfway down the wide lines. Dilma lechatchila hu delo ha di'evet ovad ha debibaya lei I chalifin asurin. The original question of whether the chalifin are asur, hainu im lechatchila asur lehachlifon v'lanus min adomim. Is it prohibited as a first choice, as when, let us say, the bowl of oranges was made forbidden on the friend, can I go afterwards and exchange the bowl of oranges for a bowl of apples and then give that to the friend and then have the friend benefit from that? That's lichatchila. Is that allowed? Avol im hichlifon b'di'evet hadamim mutorin. If, however, it's something that's post facto, then it's okay. It's mutter. V'acha b'di'evet komar. Here, in the case of the husband prohibiting the wife from benefiting, you're talking about something post facto, namely im lofsa, if she borrowed money, which is the chilufin, ba'alei choivin boyin v'nifroyin. Now, the Rosh goes on and explains a little more, but for our purposes, the case of the wife and the husband is a case of b'di'evet. But the original question that was raised by Romi Bar Chama concerned lichatchila. Can the item that was prohibited to the friend, can lichatchila, the item, be exchanged and have the friend benefit from that from the exchanged item? We continue in the Gemara. Ela ta shma. Amekadesh ba'orla eino mekadesh. A person attempts to marry a woman by giving her forbidden fruits. Orla are fruits that grow from a fruit tree within its first 3 years. Those fruits are Ozer bahano. One is not allowed to benefit from them, so if he attempts to offer them to a woman as kiddushin in exchange for agreeing to marriage, it doesn't work. Mochron the kiddush b'dmehen. If he sold the prohibited fruits, received money for the sale, and then used the money to marry the woman, harei zu mikudeshes. She is married. So we would see from here that the chalifin is allowed. The Gemara says, Hachanami lechatchila hu delo, v'i ovad ovad. In this case, we would not say that lechatchila it can be done. Just so to review the last point, our original question was, can chilufin be presented to the mudar lechatchila? That you don't see from the case of Mekadesh Ba'orla. Because the Mekadesh Ba'orla case is where a person, post facto, he happened to sell it and got money for the Orla. But L'chatchila, we're not going to say, go ahead and sell Orla. That's not allowed. That's prohibited. You're not allowed to benefit from it. And therefore, in the case of the Orla, it's L'chatchila, you shouldn't sell it. But if you did and got money for it and used that to marry the woman, so it works. But as we said already a couple of times, that does not answer our original question. The Mishnah. Hareini olecha cherem. A person declares a vow using the cherem term. And he says, I am, or as Rashi says, nechasayu olecha cherem. My property is cherem. Cherem means, for our purpose, it means prohibited to you. Hamudor Ozer. So the subject of vow now cannot benefit from the property of the madir, of the speaker. Harei at olai cherem. Here you have a self-imposed restriction that A says to B, your property upon me is forbidden. Hanoder Ozer. So then the speaker is prohibited. Hareini olecha v'at olai. Here you have a two-way situation. I am prohibiting myself to you, and that which you own is prohibited unto me. So shnehem asurim. Both are restricted, so that A cannot benefit from B's property. He accepted that prohibition upon himself, and B cannot benefit from A's property because A prohibited B from benefiting. Ushnehem, both of these fellows, mutorin b'davar shel oilei bovel. they are allowed to benefit from those things that are, now here we'll translate, it means those things that belong to the Olei Bavel. Olei Bavel basically means all the Jews that returned from the Babylonian exile, so all things that are held, we'll say, held by the general public are, now here we have a very important expression that you can see in the Ran, Mutarim b'davar shel Olei Bavel shehifkirum Olei Bavel l'chol Yisrael. The Olei Bavel, the Jews upon their return from the exile, set up things, built certain things, and then declared them unowned for the benefit of all of the Jewish people. So you don't have an issue here of partnership, which is a point that we discussed in one of our recent shiurim. However, the Gemara continues at the top of Daf Mem Ches. The Mishnah continues, "Ve'asurin b'dovar shel oiso ha'ir." However, these two fellows who had, as we said, one had imposed prohibition from benefiting from the friend's property and prohibited the friend from benefiting from his property, so they cannot benefit from items belonging to that town, to the municipality in which they live. Because regarding things that belong to that municipality, they're both holders of it, both owners of it, partners in it. And we have a diamond simply to highlight these different categories on the side of the Gemara under the Nosei Mivneh heading. The diamond appears Ezu Davar, and the double underline highlights Shalolei Bavel or Shaloi So'ir, Ma Muter Uma Oser L'Shnayim Shenodru Hano Ze Mizeh. The Ezu Davar, the Mishnah continues, Ezu Davar Shalolei Bavel, what is considered under the Olei Bavel category? Kagon Har Habayis, the Temple Mount, Vazoros, the courtyards of the Beis Hamikdash, Vahabor Shebe'emtza Derech, and the pit. The pit referred to as a water pit that is as water pit. It's used to store water for the benefit of the public. This is something that's Olei Bavel related, and hence mutter to both of these guys. The Ezu Davar Shaloi So'ir, what is considered things belonging to the city? Kagon HaRachba. Rachba is a plaza or a central square, an open area in the town where the community at times gathers together. V'hamerchotz, a municipal bathhouse, u'beis haknesses, the synagogue. V'hateva, the teva is the table upon which a Sefer Torah is read. V'hasforim, the scrolls, the holy scrolls, as is certainly the case of the Sifrei Torah of the town. V'hakoisev chelkoi l'nosi. Now this expression is going to be the subject of discussion in the Gemara, and here we'll simply translate a member of the community assigned whatever holding he had to the king. Now, it's mashma, it sounds at this point that that's also forbidden. That's something that's part of the oisoir, and hence the other fellow cannot benefit from it. Rabbi Omer, echad koisev l'nosi v'echad koisev l'hedyot. It doesn't matter specifically to whom you assigned your holding, whether it be to the king or to another commoner. Ma bein koisev l'nosi l'koisev l'hedyot. Sha koisev l'nosi ein tzorach lizkos. L'hedyot tzorach lizkos. There's an alternative text that you see in the Bach that deletes from the Mishnah this line of Ma bein koisev l'nosi koisev l'hedyot. The Mishnah goes on to explain that with regard to the issues concerning the neder, there is no difference whether you assign your holding to the nasi or to a hedyot. There's a technical difference though. Shakoisev l'nasi ein tzorach liskos. The word liskos has to do with the transfer of holdings of property to another party through a third party. In other words, if A wants to give something to Mr. B, he can do it in the following fashion. A can say to Mr. X, take this on behalf of Mr. B. That's called zichia. So when you're assigning your holdings in the property to the nasi, you don't have to do it through zichia. If you're assigning your holdings to some commoner, then you need to do zichia. V'chachomim oimrim, echad zeh ve'echad zeh tzrichim lizkois. The Chacham say that either way, you do need to go through the zichia method. Lo dibru b'nasi ela b'hoiva. The citation of nasi as an example is simply the common example that people, when they want to assign their holdings, they would do so with the nasi, with the king. By the way, we've already mentioned by way of disclaimer that this section of the Mishnah, Kaisach Chelko Nasi, is something that the Gemara has to explain. Right now we're involved with translation, but Mirza Hashem in the Gemara itself will see further clarification. The Mishnah goes on, Rav Yehuda Omer, Ein Anshe Golil Tzrichim Lichtoiv, the people of the northern region of Israel, the Golil, do not have to do this. Shekvar Kosfu Avosehen Al Yedehen. Their forebearers already took care of this. As we said, this will become explained a little more in the Gemara. The Gemara immediately asks, Amai Mitzar. As we can see under our topic heading, on the side, the Nosei Lahasbir V'Kaisiv Chelko Nosei. Like, what is going on here? After the Mishnah described things that belong to a community, and as a result of this classification, people who are Noider Hana Zeh Mizeh cannot benefit from these items, the Mishnah then added Kaisiv Chelko Nosei. The Gemara asks, Amai Mitzar, why is the Mudar prohibited? If the Madir had assigned his holding in whatever was considered part of that municipality, and he assigned his percentage in those items, and he assigned it to the Nasi, assigned it to the king, so that the Mudar you would say is out of the picture. Why then does the Mishnah suggest or sound like the Mudar remains Aser? Omar Rav Sheshes Hochi Kotoni. Oh, now we have a totally new understanding of the Mishnah. Uma Takanosam. What is the solution? Yichtevu Chelkon Lenosi. If you have two people, the result of the vow is that A cannot benefit from B and B cannot benefit from A. In order for, let us say, for them to be able to go into the local synagogue, what they would do is assign their holdings, their representative value or their percentage in the shul. They would assign it to the nasi. That then removes them. It makes them like total outsiders, and they can then go into that shul and benefit from whatever is classified as of things that are shel oisa'ir. There's a number of lines that you can see in the printer's parentheses that's many are not gores. On the side there's a note, Mikana ad elo b'hoiva nira mutar. So we're going to skip this section. We pick up Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ein anshe golil tzrichim lizkos shekvar kosfu avoisehen al yodehen. The Mishnah said that in the northern region, the suggested solution of assigning your holding to the nasi need not be done because it was already done by their forebears. Tanya. And now Bryce adds another dimension of understanding. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, anshe golil kantaronin hoyu. Kantaronin reminds you of the word in English cantankerous. They were people, wrathful individuals. They lost their cool quickly, and as a result of that type of let's say personality, people like that are kantaronim often vow prohibiting one from benefiting from the other. Since that's their that's their makeup. So Omdu Avosehen v'Kosfu Chelkeim Lunasi. Their forebears, realizing that's the way they were, assigned their holdings to the Nasi. Their holdings in things that are Shal Oisir to the Nasi, and hence they are not considered partners in those items, and hence even though the inevitability of their vowing will transpire over the generations, the fear of benefiting from Dvarim Shel Osir need not be a source of concern. With that, we conclude our shiur for today.